With the Monster Type Festival coming to a close within the next number of days, I wanted to show off at least one more deck that I was using that might give people some inspiration for what they want to bring in the ranked, and that is Dark World. Now, Dark World initially was, again, from my perspective, going to be one of those decks that would perform especially well in the event. However, I underestimated how much losing the danger package and everything would hurt it. So what we had to do is go pretty far out of our way to try and find a few alternatives to actually spice the deck up to ensure it functions. Now, the changes that we made were in the form of course, the Fabled Raven, which is something that a lot of people were playing. We were also playing Chupacabra. Yes, we won't be able to use its graveyard effect whenever it's discarded. However, the Dark World cards themselves lack a lot of drivers to drive the actual discarding of their own cards. So you just sort of have to risk it a little bit when it comes to playing Dark World. Naturally, you're going to be playing riskily. So Chupacabra being able to discard other cards and summon itself is still very valuable, as well as the Fabled Maracosia. Now, Fabled Maracosia can summon itself by discarding 2 other monsters, which is, again, like I said, a big driver for discarding, which is something a lot of the Dark World cards inherently lack. They have lots of effects that activate when discarded, but not tons of ways to actually discard. So that's why we're playing these cards, to try and make up for that difference. We'll be going through a card for card profile at the end, so you can stick around for that. I'm not saying this is like an optimal build or anything, but we did see some amount of success with it. Definitely not the best deck in the event, because I think Labyrinth absolutely crushes this, but I think Labyrinth crushes everything in this event, so I don't even really think that's a fair comparison. But either way, deck profile at the end. We got a few replays coming up here to talk about this. We actually have a really, really good replay to start off with, where we came back from certain defeat, right? And it was an absolute banger, so watch that. Deck profile at the end. Subscribe if you're new. Again, if you want to see anything more like this, be it ranked, be it replays, festivals, events, streams, whatever. If it's Master Duel related, we cover it. So if you want to see more of it, subscribe to catch it as it's coming out. Like the video if you enjoy. Let's get in. Alright, getting in here. Now, this is going to be one hell of a match, and it's up against no other than Labyrinth, the best deck of the format. Undoubtedly. They're going to start off pretty strong here, going absolutely ham here. Opening up with Lady, Coup Clock, and a Furniture Piece. Going to summon out the Lady here. Coup Clock then activating, so now they can activate a trap card set this turn, as well as activating the big Welcome Labyrinth directly from the deck. They're going to use it, chaining Lady Labyrinth of the Silver Castle to set a card to the field. They're going to set a Welcome Labyrinth. There you go. Welcome Labyrinth being set to the field. Big Welcome. Going to summon out Lovely Labyrinth with the Silver Castle before grabbing back the Lady. That's going to trigger Lovely to snipe a card out of our hands. We're already playing at a disadvantage because they're sniping one of our cards. Now, that is a bit of a pain. Chandelier adding itself back to hand. That is totally fine. Lovely. Going to snipe our Fabled Raven. That is big time painful. They're going to reset the Big Welcome, setting another card and passing. That's a pretty decent first turn as far as Labyrinth are concerned here. We decided to go Genta here off the bat. Genta going to grab our field spell, activating the field spell. That's going to trigger them going for Big Welcome Labyrinth. They do not like the look of the gates. They're going to activate Lady Labyrinth as well here from the hand now that they've activated a trap card and met these summoning conditions. Out it comes in defense. Now they're going to summon out another Lady from deck, returning that one back to hand. That's going to trigger the Lovely to pop our field spell, as well as activating another copy here of Welcome Labyrinth, chaining to that their Lady Labyrinth to set another card from their deck. Now, we all know how powerful Labyrinth is in general, and more specifically in this event, the deck is crazy, but we're going to have to play smart here if we're going to stand a chance. They're popping the field spell. It's looking pretty over here. Even myself was pretty disconcerted. I was very close to surrendering, but the game isn't over just yet. So they're going to go Coup Clock here. Coup Clock adding itself back to hand. Coup Clock, of course, being a bit of a nightmare. Now we're going to go Genta again, grabbing ourselves another copy of the field spell. They're going to go Coup Clock, so that means one of the cards that they have set they will be able to use this turn, and that's important to keep track of because they did set a Dogmatic Punishment. That is going to be a bit of a problem. They're going to play Terrors of the Overroot here, getting rid of our second field spell, playing the Fabled Raven face down onto the field, which is pretty useless to us. So we have to sort of put everything on black here. We're going to go Danger Chupacabra, dropping the Brow to summon itself out to the field, drawing one into the Rainbow. We get to draw one off the Brow as well. Going for card destruction, discarding both of our cards, which is an amazing set of cards to discard. Grapha targeting that card face down. Our Rainbow is going to grab ourselves another high level Dark World monster from deck. We're going to grab another Grapha Getting rid of Welcome Labyrinth. Now we're going to go for Ascension. We're going to fuse the Grapha in our hand and the Genta in the graveyard. That's going to bring out Grapha, Dragon Overlord of Dark World. Now, Grapha then is going to target the Dogmatica Punishment in the graveyard, forcing him to use it now, so it's use it or lose it time, baby. He's going to target the Chupacabra here. We're going to let that happen, so because, again, we can't actually interfere with this, and I talked about this in my Labyrinth video, something that we commonly forget is that because Lovely's face up, you can't actually respond to traps with monster effects, so we have to let Dogmatica Punishment resolve, but that's totally fine. Intis activates in grave. He does manage to chain block the Intis, which is a real pain here. We are going to go for Grapha nonetheless, and our opponent simply doesn't know how to read. Look at this. So we're going to go Grapha, that's fine. So we discard a card. Discarding the Grapha, he's going to summon Torby. Intis is going to pop the Grapha. Small Grapha activates the pop the lady. Big Grapha activates the summon small Grapha. So we grab back one. A lot of graphing going on around here. We're going to pop the lady, return Genta to hand to summon Rainbow. We're going to now activate Genta, discarding it to grab our third copy of the field spell. Let's see if we'll actually be able to resolve it this time. We're going to return Rainbow to summon out Grapha. Now we're going to use the field spell, banishing the Chupacabra from grave, discarding the Rainbow. We're going to grab Allure of Darkness. Not the greatest draw in the world, but we definitely do have some dark monsters here. Grabbing gold, going to grab back Ascension here by discarding the gold to the graveyard, gold then resummoning itself to the field. And we're going to bounce it back to hand to summon the Rainbow. That gives us a monster bigger than his Lovely, so we're into the battle phase, taking out the Lovely Labyrinth, swinging in with Grapha and our other Grapha to take out the rest of his monsters, and suddenly it's looking real good for us. We're going to summon back the third Grapha, going Allure of Darkness, drawing 2, discarding 1, or banishing 1, activating Foolish Burial just to get an additional copy of Rainbow into the grave. We're going to now link summon into Mudraker. Mudraker then activating to resummon Grapha from the graveyard, the Fusion Grapha. This card can be brought back, which is incredible. Gold then resummoning itself to the field as well, and again, bounce back for Rainbow, bounce back for Grapha, just +2 into the hand every single time you summon any Dark World smaller than level 7. So there you go, suddenly this hand is absolutely brutal. Our opponent doesn't have a playable card, and just like that, crushing a broken Labyrinth board, 3k to the face, 3k to the face, 35 to finish it. I was stunned when this game happened. Again, I had 100% resigned myself to losing, and then we just managed to pull it out of the bag. You're not going to do this every single time you go against Labyrinth, because Labyrinth is a strong deck. But damn, does your deck have plays. All you need to do is just believe, and you can win it. Fantastic game. It was a lot of fun. Let's get into game 2. Alright, getting into game 2 here. We're starting off this time. We're gonna go Dark World Ascension, fusing 2 into Grapha. Grapha's gonna be, because you don't have all of the crazy extra deck tools at your disposal, what you're typically relying on when it comes to your extra deck is usually Grapha, plus perhaps Machinix if you get a little bit lucky. The Grapha and the Pearl that we discarded, I'm pretty sure that one's Pearl, isn't it? It's not. What's your name again? Lucent. Okay, so Lucent brings itself back, that's fine. We're gonna go banish the Grapha for the field spell, discard the Grapha in hand to draw. We draw the Rainbow, which is fine. We're going to go now Ascension, discarding the Rainbow to grab Ascension back to hand. That's going to trigger the Rainbow to grab gold. Now we're going to summon out the Rainbow here and then grab Rainbow back to summon Grapha. So this is fine. We're going to set Ascension, and the reason this is fine is because of Grapha. And this is going to be a... This is a game where our opponent doesn't read. So the way Grapha works is that he can change one of your opponent's effects to say that they will discard a card from your hand. Now the card you're going to discard is gold. Not only does gold resummon itself when discarded to the grave, if it's discarded by an opponent's card effect, which it will be in this circumstance, you also get to target 2 cards your opponent controls and destroy them as well. So that's very important in terms of the interruptions of the deck. They're going to go Extravagance here. I'm pretty sure this is another Lab player. They're going to go evenly matched here off the rip, because of course they are. We're forced to use our Grapha earlier than we otherwise would have liked to, which means that of course there's no real sense in us discarding our gold. We're instead going to summon out Lucent then summoning Genta from our deck, so we have some sort of follow-up for next turn. I'm going to set a card and then go into Lady before setting 3. They went to end their turn here, but we're going to go into another copy of Grapha. That's going to trigger off the Rainbow that we sent to grab ourselves a Grapha from deck to hand, and that's going to pass turn. So we're setting ourselves up in a position where we want to eradicate as much of their back row as we possibly can. We're going to use these two to go into Nightmare Phoenix here off the bat. Nightmare Phoenix dropping Imperm to target a face down card. That happened to be Dogmatica Punishment. We're going to respond to Dogmatica Punishment using Grapha, Dragon Overlord of the Dark World. They're going to go Ice Dragon's Prison in response to that. Lady Labyrinth activating in response to Ice Dragon's Prison. And then Welcome Labyrinth on top of that. Suddenly is Chain Link 6. And we only activated 2 cards. What the hell is going on? This is my turn, good sir. They're going to go Lovely here. Lovely then being able to try and spin some cards out of our hand. We'll see. Ice Dragon's Prison going to summon out Rainbow to our field, banishing it and Grapha. Unfortunately, Grapha then changing Dogmatica Punishment's effect to discard the gold. Dogmatica Punishment gone, 2 of our back row gone. Gold then activates to target the remaining 2 back row to destroy them and summon itself back to field, while the big Grapha is going to summon back the small Grapha that we banished earlier in the duel. He's going to flip up his big Welcome Labyrinth as well as activating the effect of his Lovely on the field, summoning out Ariana, bouncing back Lady. He's going to pop on remaining Grapha on the field, but I don't know if he noticed, anytime you summon back the Grapha off of his effect, you discard 1 card out of your hand, which means he does not get to keep the card he just added to hand. That is Lady gone. And we get to use these effects again because none of these cards are once per turn. So Ariana's going to search the deck for a card. That's fine, Forehead. I'm just going to rip it out of your hand again. Get it out of here. Grapha then coming back. Grapha popping the Lovely. Bouncing gold back to hand. Summoning out our 3rd Grapha. Banishing Genta. Discard the gold. Draw 1. Summon gold. Summon Genta. Bang, 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 bang. And it just gets out of control. That is the power of Dark World, beating another Labyrinth player. Again, sometimes you just got the gas, man, and it just goes, right? Let's get into game 3. Alright, getting into our 3rd and final game, and this is going to be an example of what can happen in situations where you don't have to discard resources, right? So here we were playing Imperm. We eventually did cut Imperm for this exact reason. I actually think this was the duel that caused me to cut it. We're gonna hit our evenly matched with Judgment. Fair enough. We had Judgment having his life points. We're gonna go into main phase 2. We're gonna set to activate Archives, activate Allure of Darkness, draw 2, banish the Brow. Hopefully we just hit something. We're gonna go Allure again. We're gonna draw 2, discarding the Beige. Unfortunately, nothing for us to play with. They're going to go Duster here, popping the remaining cards we have. Then they're going to go for Lady. And I'm pretty sure that it just goes awry from here. Big welcome then. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we don't stick around for very much longer. So Lady's going to set a card onto the field. There's the Ice Dragon Prison. That's going to give them total control of the field. They're going to go Ariana, bouncing back to Lady. Ariana gets searching for their deck for a card. No, sorry, they're just going to draw 1 and summon 1, going into the Lovely. Lovely, of course, being on the field is a major problem. Activating its effect, gonna reset Big Welcome from the grave, and suddenly they just have reset all of their resources. They're right back where they started, and this is why Labyrinth is the best deck in the event, for sure. They're gonna go Chain Link 1, Big Welcome, Chain Link 2, Lady Labyrinth, setting up the Dogmatica Punishment. Again, Dogmatica Punishment, Ice Dragon Prison. They're gonna summon out another Lady, bouncing Lady back to hand, and they actually, I'm pretty sure, put lethal damage on board here. Yep, there it is. 3k, 3k, and 29. There you go. Dark World isn't the only one with gas. And I had to show at least one game where we didn't have the ability to discard cards, because that is the biggest problem with this deck in this event. And I don't want to sell this to people as this infinite gas money-making machine, right? Because it isn't. There are limitations, as there are with any deck, and this is one of the major limitations. Sometimes if you just can't discard cards, you just can't start your plays. Let's get into the deck profile. Alrighty, so we're going to break this up here into a few different segments. So we're going to talk about the low-leveled Dark World monsters, high-level Dark World monsters, and then the additional discard engines. So in terms of low-level Dark World monsters, we're going to start off with Cerulli. Cerulli, when discarded, will summon itself to your opponent's field. If this card is ever special summoned by a Dark World card, your opponent discards 1 card. The idea is that you summon this to your opponent's field, and then it will discard a card out of your hand, and then you can get gaming, right? So Cerulli, we got Brow, which when discarded will draw a card. If discarded by your opponent, will draw 2. Beige, when discarded, will special summon itself. Snow, when discarded, will search your deck for any Dark World card, which is good. I believe there's also, if it's discarded by your opponent, you can also target a monster in your opponent's graveyard and special summon that as well. Which again never really comes up. Primarily, if this is discarded, search your deck for Dark World card. That's pretty much it. Genta, definitely the most powerful out of them in my opinion, because it's the most self-sufficient. This card can discard itself to search your deck for the field spell, and what I should mention is that none of these effects I talked about so far are once per turn. So this can discard multiple cards per turn, draw multiple, special summon multiple times, search for multiple cards. All of these are not once per turn. The only hard once per turn that exists basically in the entire deck is this card's secondary effect, which says if it's banished, and if you control a Dark World card, you can special summon it. So the idea is that you banish it off the field spell, which we'll get to in a minute. So this card can discard himself with the field spell as many times as he wants, but the only once per turn effect is the resummon from the banish pile. And that's pretty much it. All of the small Dark Worlds exist to generate advantage. You're drawing cards, you're searching cards, you're summoning, you're searching. They exist to generate advantage. Your big Dark Worlds then exist to beat ass. So Gold and Lucent will both special summon themselves to the field when discarded by a card effect. If discarded by an opponent's card effect, Gold will pop 2 cards your opponent controls as well, and Lucent will special summon a Fiend monster from your deck, which is pretty good. You can also summon it to either field, so if you have like a spacey card in hand, you can actually summon Ceruli to their field instead. But sometimes, like you saw in the gameplay, we'll typically use it just to shore up our defenses and grant us resources for the following turn, like Genta. Then you've got Grapha and Rainbow, and these 2 cards are especially unique. So they both have pretty good discard effects. When Grapha is discarded, you get to pop a card. Pretty awesome. If it's discarded by an opponent's card, you get to pop a card and steal a monster out of their hand, which is disgusting. That part doesn't come up super often, but it's pretty neat when it does. But primarily this card is an amazing board breaking tool because you will continually just discard and loop, discard, loop, pop, discard, loop, pop, discard, loop, pop, over and over. So this card will obliterate your opponent's boards. Second to that is Rainbow, which when discarded will search your deck for any level 5 or higher Dark World. So it exists to search for the likes of Grapha, or if you've already got a couple of Grapha, then you probably want to grab like a Gold. Now, the thing about the Rainbow and the Grapha is they can both special summon themselves back from the graveyard simply by returning an existing Dark World card back to the hand. So if you have any small Dark World monster, even like the likes of a Gold, usually what you'll do first is you'll return that monster back to the hand to summon out Rainbow, because Rainbow will special summon itself by returning any level 7 or lower Dark World back to the hand. Then you can return Rainbow to the hand to special summon Grapha from the graveyard, because Grapha does not care about levels, which means it can return the level 8 Rainbow, whereas Rainbow could not return the level 8 Grapha. So you do Rainbow first, and then Grapha second, because Grapha can return Rainbow. And like I said, none of these are once per turn. You can special summon these guys as many times per turn as you can. You can pop as many cards as you want, search as many cards as you want. None of this shit is once per turn. Like, they forgot that that term existed when they designed Dark Worlds. That's the whole point of the deck. And that's usually where your gas comes from, right? Just being able to infinitely loop these effects. We've also, in terms of spells and traps, we've got a couple of Dark World spells and traps, primarily the field spell. The field spell is pretty damn nasty. You can basically, if you banish a Fiend from grave, you can discard a Fiend and then you draw one. So you need to have one in grave and you need to have one in hand. So sometimes this can be a little bit bricky in this particular version, because you lack as much ability to discard cards rather than you would in a regular ranked version with the dangers. But it's still really freaking good because it works alongside your Genta excellently. So you banish one from grave, discard one, draw one. Pretty awesome. Not once per turn. Or sorry, well, it's a soft once per turn, I should say. So you can activate multiple copies of Gates. The idea is you use Genta, discard Genta, search for this. Well, now you've got a Fiend in grave. So you'll banish Genta from grave, discard one, draw one. That'll trigger Genta's secondary effect to summon it back to the field, for you then to return back to your hand off of your Rainbow or Grapha to search for another field spell. And you can't continually loop it, unfortunately, because they had the foresight to realize that, okay, that's going to be stupid. So they did put the one and only once per turn onto the special summon of this banished card. So they did have the foresight to prevent that loop, for you to loop 3 field spells every single game. But you can still loop at least 2, which is still nuts. Dark World Archives. So Dark World Archives, you can boost up all your Dark Worlds by discarding one. All of your Dark Worlds gain 100 attack multiplied by the level of the discarded monster, which is pretty damn great considering you can discard a pretty high level monster. Now that counts as discarding for, I'm pretty sure you discard as cost for that effect. No, you don't, actually. No, you discard for effect, which is awesome. So yeah, you can just discard one of your Dark Worlds for free. The only thing is you need to have at least one Dark World on the field to boost. So do remember that. Then, if a monster whose original type is Fiend is discarded from your hand by the effect of a Dark World card, you can discard a card, then draw 2. And the discard is again discarding for effect, which will trigger off all your discard effects, plus draw 2. It's pretty good stuff overall. We put in 1. It's not something you want to see in your opening hand because it can be a little bit bricky if you don't have the resources to start discarding. But it's searchable off of snow, so we might as well play 1. Lastly, then we have the fusion spell, the quick play Dark World Ascension. This card's pretty awesome because you can fusion summon any Fiend fusion monster by banishing materials from your field or graveyard, or if you're summoning a Dark World monster, you can discard monsters from your hand as material. Now that's great because if you were to, say, have a bunch of cards in your hand that wanted to be discarded, you can discard those guys, fusion summon out an incredible boss monster, which we're going to get to, and then also trigger off all of your discard effects, which is insane. So Ascension's really good, and what makes it even better is you can add it back to your hand by discarding a Dark World monster, so you can trigger off more discard effects while recycling back your quick play fusion spell. So ultimately this card is insane. The one thing I hadn't really checked out is it allows you to fusion summon any Fiend type fusion monster. I hadn't actually checked to see if there are any other good Fiend fusions that you could realistically summon in this deck. There's a lot of options here. I'm not going to go through them all now, but you guys can tell me below if there's any powerful Fiend fusion monsters you can see realistically fitting into this deck, or if the only viable option is in fact Grapha. But I digress, this card is absolutely busted. So let's talk about the other cards we're playing in the deck to facilitate some discarding. So we're playing a small Fabled package of 3 copies of Fabled Raven and 2 copies of Marcosia. So Raven will once per turn allow you to discard any number of cards you want, and it will gain 1 level per discarded card. This is also a tuner, which is important to bear in mind because I can finally play Groza in a deck. This card looks amazing, its effect is pretty damn decent, and the 2800 attack, it's far from small. I've had this card forever, and I've just never had a deck to play it in. So I can finally play Groza, which is neat. I just want to play Groza, like, you know what I mean? Leave me alone. This does discard, but I'm pretty sure it discards its cost. It doesn't. This card discards its effect as well, which is insane. It didn't come up much, unfortunately, but this card actually works really well with the deck because you discard for effect to quick play negate the effect of an opponent's monster in the field, which is pretty damn awesome. If a Fiend is sent from the hand to the graveyard, you can apply one of the following effects to this card until the end of the turn. You can make it immune to battle destruction, to effect destruction, or immune to targeting. So it basically becomes a lot harder to deal with, as well as negating a card, as well as triggering a Dark World effect, and you know what I mean? It's pretty neat, right? Its primary use is like discarding a Grapha during your opponent's turn to negate something and pop something, as well as becoming immune to typically I would do immune to targeting because there's a little bit more of that going around, but immune to destruction is pretty neat too. But yeah, being a tuner is awesome, especially one that can modulate its level because, well, as it stands, you would discard 1. Now with gold, it can go into level 8. Just by itself, without discarding anything, it works with Lucent. You can discard 3 cards to go into with Brow, 2 cards for Vanguard or Snow, so you don't have to discard much, and again, discarding your cards just triggers off all your crazy effects, which is what you want. It typically comes up most commonly with Beast though, it really does. Chupacabra. Chupacabra reveals itself. Your opponent chooses a random card in your hand and discards it. If it's not the Chupacabra, you summon the Chupacabra and you draw a card. So ideally, you summon it, you draw 1, and you get a Dark World effect. That is the idea. Normally, this card is better in decks with other dangers, but we're only allowed to play this card, so we just have to make do. But I still think it's worth playing. Even just as a level 4 that you can summon to go into the likes of your Dugaris, just a free discard effect. It's if they hit it, sad stories, you know what I mean? Sometimes it just be like that, but most of the time, ideally, if you've got a decently sized hand, they won't, and the additional advantage you can generate off of it is more than worth playing it. Then we've got Marcosia. So Marcosia, you can discard up to 2 monsters from your hand, as long as it includes another Fable monster, and special summon this card. Now, it's a little bricky. I know. I get it. I can see your concerns. If you don't want to play this card, don't play it. But you really need gas. You really need gas for this deck, and this card is something. I 100% understand if you don't want to play this. It literally never really came up during testing, so I can't even guarantee to you that it's a good ad. It was a cool idea that I wanted to test out, but I just never really drew into it often enough for me to know if it was a good idea or not. So it is up to you. What you could do instead, if you really don't want to play the Marcosia, playing another Cerulli is not going to be a terrible idea, as well as potentially playing Trade in to just draw more cards. I know a lot of people like Trade in this deck. We don't play as many level 8s as we typically do, but playing some Trade in wouldn't hurt. But there's just some ideas. We were playing it. You don't have to. It is up to you. We've got card destruction. Both players discard their hands and drew as many cards as they discarded. We got the Royal Rare version, which is dope. Again, more so an emergency card. You don't want to use this card very often, especially not if your opponent has a full hand, because you're giving them 5 more cards, which could be the end of the game for you. But at the same time, you could also generate an insane amount of resources off of it, so it really is situational. Definitely not a terrible card to have. Foolish Burial, primarily to put Rainbow in grave. Rainbow's the main card you want to put in the graveyard. Occasionally Grapha, so that you have it for fusion materials, but in almost all circumstances we had very easy access to Grapha, so Foolish Burial was more so for Rainbow, or perhaps Agenta to banish off the field spell. Elder of Darkness, draw 2, banish 1 in hand. Again, not a fantastic card, because you do have to banish, it doesn't discard, which is a real pain. I do wish this card was a little bit better, but you need as many cards as you can get your hand on, so we are playing it. And lastly, Evenly Matched, just to break boards, because Labyrinth is everywhere, and this is one of the better counters to Labyrinth, even if they can normally play around it. So whether or not you want to play this is up to you. You can go 100% gas if you want, but I don't think there's enough gas in the format to go 100%, so you know, you tell me. Into the extra deck, we're playing 2 copies of Grapha. You can get away with 1, but again, you saw in the gameplay, occasionally a second one does come up, and this card is just so damn cool. This card is busted strong, bonkers strong, and he looks amazing. His materials are super generic, the fusion spell is amazing. Everything about this card is just so well designed. I love it. So when your opponent activates a monster effect or a normal spell or trap card, specifically normal spell or trap, so it won't respond to continuous or quick play, you can activate the effect. That card's activated effect becomes your opponent discards 1 card. So now your opponent is discarding 1 of your cards, and it's a card of your choice. Which means not only are you removing their original effect, which is essentially an Omni Negate, you're also discarding a Grapha to get rid of 2 of their cards, where you pop a card and steal 1 out of their hand. You're sending a Rainbow, you're sending a Gold to pop 2 and summon, you're sending Cerulli to, you know what I mean? You're just setting up this insane situation. As another effect, and this is one that again came up in the gameplay, where if this card it leaves the field because of an opponent's card, special summon Grapha back from the banished pile or graveyard, and then each player sends a card from their hand to the grave for anyone who has a hand. So even if you have no cards or your opponent has no cards, whoever does have cards will have to discard 1. And you saw in the gameplay how we just looped out 2 cards of our opponent's hand because they kept searching and we just kept sending. So this card is insane. That second effect is not once per turn. The first effect is once per turn, unfortunately. The Omni Negate, that is once per turn, but the second effect is not. So as many times as they get rid of it, it'll continue to loop cards and summon out your original Graphas. So you don't need to worry too much about banishing the big guys. They will be back. We got some generic synchro stuff that we never really used. These guys are just kind of here because you don't gotta play them. They're kind of ass. We were playing Groza though, which we've already talked about. This card is amazing. I love this card so much. It's just such a cool design. It reminds me a lot of Monarchs, just in how it's designed. I just love the look of it. I love its name. I love its effect. Everything about this card is just awesome. So I'm just kind of happy to have a deck that I can finally play this card in. Into the Exceeds, the only real ones you're going to use, well, I guess they're all kind of useful. We didn't really use Baguska at all. It is a very powerful card, so you definitely want to include it. It is a really, really good card, but primarily you're going to be using Dugares. Dugares is going to make up for at least some of your lack of gas, because he can discard 2 cards and then discard a card and then draw 2. So you get to draw a bunch of cards as well as discarding one to hopefully trigger off a decently powerful effect that should start a chain reaction. So Dugaris is definitely a very powerful one. You probably want to play more of this, if I'm honest. You, in all likelihood, would like to drop pitch and play more Dugaris, if I'm being real. Because again, I never used any of this synchro garbage. But yeah, that's just me. Then we got the Caesar and Machinix package. I've talked about this on a ton of videos recently. I'm not going to explain it again here, but it's a pretty decent monster. Double interruption basically during your opponent's turn. Nightmare Phoenix, get popping back row in a format full of Labyrinth. Gotta have some back row removal. We got the Mudraker. So Mudraker is pretty damn awesome. It has a couple of effects that are all pretty useful in this deck in particular. So if a monster you control will be destroyed by battle or a card effect, you contribute another fiend you control instead, which is very useful not only for protecting key monsters, but also in avoiding certain forms of destruction and interruption from the likes of Labyrinth. So it's been more than once where I've avoided triggering off a Lovely or something like that by, instead of allowing their traps to destroy my shit, I instead tribute something else to protect it, which means that monster never left the field thanks to a trap card. Things like that. It does come up and is somewhat niche in usage, but it's definitely worth remembering. What's more important, however, is the fact that it can discard a card to target a fiend in your grave and summon it back, including Grapha. And now, while Grapha's secondary effect requires it be fusion summoned to the field, its first effect doesn't. You can just summon back your 3200 Omni Negate off of Mudraker. So abso-freaking-lutely, I'm playing this card in a deck filled with things that special summon themselves for free? Hell yeah. This card's pretty damn awesome. We got Unicorn for a generic sort of interruption. Again, like I said, you can vomit out monsters like nobody's business, so you can definitely play Unicorn to get some gas off. And lastly, of course, the Unchained Abomination. You can play things like Apollosa. Apollosa is a decent one. Underworld Goddess is a decent one as well, although there's not really any towers in this format. Evil Eye, I guess, to an extent, but we didn't really struggle with Evil Eye because we were able to just annihilate their back row constantly. So we didn't really struggle with Evil Eye too much. But you could play these two cards if you want to cut out some of this synchro garbage. You could. I kind of like Archfiend's Call. I kind of like this just like as a fallback boss monster because it is immune to targeting and it's 2500, so it's it's kind of a pain in the ass. But it's definitely not like game ending, so I wouldn't stretch yourself out over it. But yeah, there you go. There's the deck. There's the options. You can take it, do whatever you want with it. It is a highly modular deck. The only real card I'm iffy as hell on is this. The Marcosia. I wish I drew into it more during testing. The event is coming to a close, so I can't sit and test it forever. I can see an argument for this being a bad card for sure. Absolutely. Like, don't get me wrong. But man, you need something. You need something. There's the deck. Do with it what you will. Subscribe if you got this far into the video and haven't subscribed yet. Like the video if you haven't already liked it. And I'll see you next time. Bye bye.